This isn't how NFL rookie stories usually start. Most rookies are talking about playbooks, depth charts, and proving they belong. But while that's happening around the league, Shedeur Sanders is doing something completely different. He's standing inside luxury fashion showrooms. He's discussing custom measurements. He's preparing to step onto runways in Paris, not stadium turf. And that contrast is exactly the point. Because while fans are still debating draft position and on-field expectations, Shedeur is already operating like someone who understands the bigger game. Not just football, business, culture, leverage. Reports claim Shedeur and his brother have landed a massive partnership with Amiri, one of the most influential names in modern high fashion, with appearances tied to Paris Fashion Week. And this isn't just a quick photo op or an Instagram post in designer clothes. This is runway-level involvement, creative collaboration, real visibility in a world most NFL players never touch. That alone raises eyebrows. But what really has people talking is what this moment represents. Shedeur isn't moving like a rookie who's grateful for his first big check. He's moving like an executive who understands timing, positioning, and long-term value. While others are focused on short-term endorsements, he's reportedly prioritizing ownership, equity, and influence. Ideas most athletes don't seriously consider until late in their careers. And that's where the debate starts. Some people see this as genius, a blueprint for modern athletes who understand their worth beyond the field. Others call it a distraction. They question whether all this off-field success takes focus away from football. And then there's the unavoidable shadow, his last name. Being the son of Deion Sanders opens doors. No one denies that. But doors opening and deals closing are two very different things. Brands don't commit serious money unless someone can move culture, attention, and product. And Shedeur is proving that he can. This isn't just a fashion story. It's not just a money story. It's a power shift story. Because what Shedeur Sanders is doing right now looks less like a rookie figuring things out, and more like an athlete rewriting the rules in real time. And once you see the full picture, it becomes clear why so many people are suddenly realizing they underestimated him. The moment that really flipped the conversation wasn't a stat line or a highlight throw. It was Paris. While most NFL rookies were posting off-season workout clips or talking about earning their spot, Shedeur Sanders was sitting inside a luxury fashion house, discussing fabrics, silhouettes, and custom fits. Not as a guest, not as a fan, but as someone with real involvement. That distinction matters. Reports claim Shedeur and his brother didn't just sign a traditional endorsement with Amiri. This wasn't a wear it once and post deal. This was runway participation, creative alignment, a signal that one of the most respected American luxury brands sees him as a cultural asset, not just an athlete. And that's rare. High fashion doesn't hand out credibility easily, especially to football players. Basketball and soccer stars cross into that world more often, but the NFL has always been different. Helmets hide faces. Seasons are brutal. Careers are uncertain. Most players never get anywhere near this level of crossover. So when Shedeur steps into that space this early, it sends a message. Not about style, but about influence. Amiri isn't betting on touchdowns. They're betting on relevance. On someone who can speak to youth culture, streetwear, luxury, and authenticity at the same time. Someone who feels organic, not manufactured. Someone who moves the needle without trying too hard. That's why this moment landed so hard online. Fans weren't just surprised, they were confused. How does a rookie already have this level of access? How is he walking into rooms most veterans never reach? And why does it feel like he's already playing chess while everyone else is still learning the rules? The answer isn't football. It's positioning. Shedeur understands that today's athletes aren't just competitors, they're platforms. Brands don't wait until careers are over anymore. They want early alignment, long-term narratives, people who can grow alongside the brand, not just represent it for a season. And Paris made one thing very clear. This wasn't random. This wasn't luck. And this definitely wasn't just about clothes. It was a public signal that Shedeur Sanders is being viewed differently. By brands, by culture, and soon, by the rest of the league. And once that realization set in, a much bigger question started circulating. If he's already winning off the field like this, what exactly is he building next? What most people missed in that Paris moment is why a brand like Amiri would move this decisively, this early. Luxury fashion doesn't chase hype, it chases positioning. Brands at that level aren't looking for the best athlete on paper. They're looking for someone who sits at the intersection of culture, timing, and authenticity. And right now, Shedeur Sanders checks boxes most players don't even see yet. He speaks directly to Gen Z without trying to manufacture relatability. His style doesn't feel styled. His confidence doesn't feel coached. And most importantly, he doesn't feel like a temporary moment. He feels like someone who's going to be around and visible for a long time. That's gold in fashion. Amiri isn't just selling clothes. They're selling identity, relevance, a lifestyle that blends luxury with edge. And to do that in today's market, brands need faces that feel real to younger audiences, especially in Black American culture, where sports, fashion, and music overlap constantly. That's where Shedeur stands out. He doesn't need to reinvent himself to fit the brand. He already lives in that space, which means the partnership feels natural instead of forced. And when something feels organic, it travels faster and lasts longer. This is also why the timing matters so much. Shedeur didn't wait until he was an established NFL star to build this bridge. He moved early, when his story is still being written. That allows brands to grow with him, not jump on later once the image is already defined. And that's a subtle but powerful shift. Most athletes let their agents chase deals after success arrives. Shedeur flipped the order. He built leverage before the league fully defined him. By the time the football world catches up, his brand footprint is already locked in. That's not accidental. It's the same reason brands are more interested in athletes who understand ownership, equity, and long-term value instead of just upfront checks. Endorsements fade, influence compounds. And suddenly, this isn't just about Paris or fashion. It's about control. Control over image. Control over narrative. Control over value. That's why this Amiri move landed differently. It wasn't flashy, it was strategic. And once people started connecting those dots, another layer of the story came into focus. Because Paris wasn't the first time Shedeur made a move that left people stunned. It was just the most visible one. And the next decision he made might be even bigger. That's where the conversation shifts from style to strategy. Because long before Paris Fashion Week grabbed headlines, there were already whispers circulating in business circles about how Shedeur Sanders was approaching brand deals differently than almost anyone his age. According to reports, one of the clearest examples came during negotiations with Gatorade. Most athletes, especially rookies, don't hesitate when a massive cash offer hits the table. Guaranteed money, immediate security, no downside. But rumors suggest Shedeur didn't just look at the number, he looked at the structure. Instead of focusing only on upfront payment, it's been said that he pushed for something far more rare: ownership exposure. Equity. That word changes everything. Equity means long-term participation. It means benefiting not just from a campaign, but from the company's continued growth. And if reports are accurate, Shedeur was willing to pass on a massive guaranteed payout in exchange for a smaller slice of something much bigger. That's not a rookie mindset. That's an investor mindset. Most players don't start thinking this way until the checks stop coming. Shedeur is thinking this way before his NFL career has even fully begun, and that tells you something important about how he views his future. He's not playing for the next contract. He's building for the next generation. If even a fraction of these reports hold weight, the move would place him in an entirely different category of athlete, one who understands that ownership outlives endorsement and influence compounds over time. That's why this part of the story matters more than the headlines. Because turning down guaranteed money, if that's truly what happened, signals extreme confidence. Confidence not just in football ability, but in brand value, cultural relevance, and longevity. It's a bet on himself at a scale most people never attempt. And it explains why brands are treating him differently. They're not negotiating with a kid chasing a bag. They're negotiating with someone who understands leverage. That's rare, especially at this stage. And once that reputation starts circulating quietly behind the scenes, it changes how every future deal is approached. Brands don't just see an athlete, they see a partner. Which is exactly why the next chapter of this story gets even more eye-opening. Because when it came time to deal with Nike, Shedeur didn't just sign a contract. He rewrote the terms of engagement. The Nike situation is where everything started to feel undeniable. Before Shedeur Sanders ever took a meaningful NFL snap, reports surfaced that he had already secured a major deal with Nike. That alone raised eyebrows. Big brands usually wait. They want proof. They want longevity. They want reduced risk. Nike moved early. And that wasn't an accident. What made the deal even more shocking, according to reports, was how it was structured. Instead of a standard endorsement where the athlete gets paid to appear in ads, it's been said that performance triggers and sales leverage were built directly into the agreement. In other words, Shedeur wasn't just betting on Nike's platform. Nike was betting on his pull. Then came the jerseys. While analysts were busy debating draft slots and preseason reps, merchandise told a very different story. Reports claim Shedeur's jersey sales outpaced other rookies, some of them taken much earlier in the draft. That's not hype, that's demand. And demand is the language brands care about most. This is where leverage flips. Draft position matters to teams. Brand traction matters to companies. And Shedeur was dominating the second category without needing validation from the first. That's why the Nike deal reportedly expanded so quickly. When sales move, clauses activate. When engagement spikes, confidence follows. And suddenly, what started as a strong endorsement looks more like a long-term investment. This is the part critics struggle with. They see the money and assume entitlement, but what they're missing is proof. Brands don't hand out enhanced terms because of last names or social buzz alone. They do it because numbers back it up. Views, clicks, sales, cultural impact. Shedeur is delivering on all of that. And here's the key difference between him and most rookies. Most athletes hope success unlocks leverage. Shedeur built leverage before success was officially stamped. That changes how every conversation unfolds. Agents negotiate differently. Brands listen differently. Opportunities compound faster because the risk profile shifts. By the time many players realize their value, the peak moment has already passed. Shedeur is hitting his before the league has even fully decided who he is. And that creates a level of freedom most young quarterbacks never experience. Which leads directly into the next part of the story, because Nike wasn't the end of this strategy. It was just one piece of a much larger blueprint he's quietly putting together. Once you zoom out, it becomes clear this was never about one brand. Nike, Amiri, Gatorade, those are headlines, but they're not the strategy. What Shedeur Sanders is building looks far more like a portfolio than an endorsement list. Multiple lanes, different audiences, long-term positioning across industries that don't rise and fall with one season or one injury. Reports suggest Shedeur has been intentional about diversification, apparel that speaks directly to younger fans, lifestyle products tied to personality and roots, gaming and digital partnerships that keep him present where attention already lives. Each move targets a different ecosystem, but they all connect back to the same core idea: control the brand, not just the paycheck. That's rare, especially this early. Most rookies hand everything to agents and focus solely on football. There's nothing wrong with that, but it also means learning the business side late, when leverage is already slipping. Shedeur flipped that timeline. He's learning, negotiating, and positioning while his value is climbing. And that's why people are paying attention. Because this doesn't look like someone chasing money. It looks like someone building infrastructure. Something that can grow even when the spotlight shifts. Something that exists beyond Sundays. But this is also where the criticism starts getting louder. Some fans question whether all this off-field movement distracts from football. Others argue that too much focus on business can dilute development. And then there's the unavoidable comparison: players who came before, who kept things quieter, who waited their turn. Here's the problem with that thinking. Time has changed. Today's athletes aren't just competing on the field, they're competing for attention in a global marketplace. Ignoring that reality doesn't make it go away. It just means someone else captures it first. And Shedeur clearly understands that. More importantly, none of this replaces football. It supports it. Financial freedom reduces pressure. Ownership reduces urgency. When an athlete isn't chasing the next check, decisions get clearer. Risk gets manageable. Development becomes the priority instead of survival. That's the hidden advantage most critics miss. And it explains why brands are comfortable aligning with him long-term. They don't see chaos. They see discipline, structure, someone who can manage complexity without losing focus. Still, there's one accusation that refuses to go away. The idea that none of this happens without his last name. And that's where the story takes its sharpest turn, because access may open doors, but it doesn't close deals. And it definitely doesn't move product. Which brings us to the question everyone keeps circling around. Is Shedeur being handed success? Or is he proving, deal by deal, that he actually belongs in these rooms? That's the accusation people keep coming back to. The last name. There's no denying it. Being the son of Deion Sanders opens doors most athletes never even see. Access matters. Introductions matter. Visibility matters. Anyone pretending otherwise isn't being honest. But access and outcomes are not the same thing. Doors open every day in business. Very few people stay in the room. Luxury brands don't commit serious money because of legacy alone. Global companies don't attach their image to someone unless the numbers justify it. Influence has to translate. Engagement has to convert. Product has to move. And that's where the nepotism argument starts to fall apart. If Shedeur's name was the only reason, the results wouldn't follow. Jersey sales wouldn't spike. Social engagement wouldn't consistently outperform peers. Brands wouldn't expand deals instead of quietly letting them expire. That's not how corporate decisions work. Companies don't run on favors. They run on data. And by every visible metric, Shedeur is delivering. That's also why the distraction label doesn't stick when you look closer. Distractions cause slippage. They create inconsistency. They show up in preparation, discipline, and performance. But what's actually happening here is the opposite. Managing multiple ventures requires structure. It demands time management, It forces prioritization. The same mental traits that make great quarterbacks, processing speed, decision-making, leadership, are the traits needed to operate at this level off the field. This isn't chaos. It's control. And here's the part critics rarely acknowledge. Shedeur isn't doing this instead of football. He's doing it alongside football. And the off-field success removes pressure rather than adding it. He's not playing scared. He's not chasing the next contract. He's not worried about one injury ending everything. That freedom matters. It allows development without desperation, growth without panic, confidence without arrogance. And that's exactly why this story keeps making people uncomfortable. It challenges the old model, the idea that young athletes should wait quietly, stay narrow, and defer power until later. Shedeur didn't wait. He studied the system, understood leverage early, and moved accordingly. Not recklessly, but intentionally. So yes, his last name opened doors. But his decisions are what kept them open. And once you accept that, the conversation shifts. Because this stops being a debate about privilege and starts becoming a case study in preparation, timing, and execution. Which brings us to the most overlooked advantage of all, the one that might matter more on the field than any endorsement ever could. This is the part of the story that almost nobody talks about, but it might be the most important piece of all. Financial freedom changes how an athlete plays the game. For most NFL rookies, the pressure is immediate and relentless. Every snap feels like an audition. Every hit carries the weight of future contracts. One bad season or one injury can completely alter the trajectory of their lives. That pressure shapes decisions on the field, often in ways fans never see. But Shedeur Sanders isn't operating under that same weight. Because when an athlete isn't relying on football as their only source of long-term security, something shifts mentally. The fear of what if fades. The urgency to protect future money disappears, and in its place comes clarity. That clarity matters at quarterback more than any other position. Quarterbacks have to take calculated risks. They have to stand in the pocket an extra second. They have to trust reads instead of playing scared. They have to learn through mistakes without letting those mistakes define them. Most young quarterbacks don't get that luxury. They're constantly looking over their shoulder. Shedeur is. He doesn't need the next deal to validate him. He doesn't need to rush development to prove he belongs. He can focus on mastering the system, understanding defenses, and growing at the pace that actually produces long-term success. That's a massive advantage. And contrary to what critics assume, this kind of off-field success doesn't pull attention away from football. It sharpens it. Managing business ventures at this level requires discipline, structure, and elite time management. Those same traits translate directly to preparation, film study, and leadership in the locker room. You don't build multiple high-level partnerships by being unfocused. You do it by being intentional. This is why the old narrative that athletes must choose between business and football doesn't hold up anymore. The modern game rewards players who understand leverage, reduce pressure, and create stability early. Financial independence isn't a distraction, it's insulation. Insulation against panic. Insulation against desperation. Insulation against playing scared. And when a quarterback plays free, mentally and emotionally, it shows. That's the hidden edge here. While others are fighting for survival, Shedeur is playing for growth. While others are chasing security, he already has it. And that allows him to approach football the way coaches actually want young quarterbacks to approach it: calm, patient, and confident. Which is why this entire story leads to one unavoidable conclusion. Shedeur isn't just changing how rookies make money. He's changing how they prepare to succeed. When you pull all of this together, the picture becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just a story about fashion deals, brand money, or flashy numbers. It's a story about a shift, one that a lot of people weren't ready to see happening this early. Shedeur Sanders isn't waiting for permission. He isn't following the old timeline where athletes grind first, cash in later, and only start thinking about ownership when the playing days are over. He's compressing the entire process into one moment and doing it in public. That's why this makes people uncomfortable. It challenges the idea that young players should stay quiet. It challenges the belief that business focus equals distraction. And it challenges the league's traditional power structure, where teams and brands dictate terms and athletes simply accept them. Shedeur flipped that dynamic. He built leverage before the league fully defined him. He aligned with brands that see long-term value instead of short-term hype. And he created financial stability that allows him to approach football with clarity instead of fear. That doesn't guarantee success on the field. But it does guarantee something just as important: control. Control over his image. Control over his decisions. Control over his future. And that's the part critics keep missing. This isn't arrogance, it's preparation. It's the result of studying the system early and understanding how value actually works in modern sports. Yes, his last name opened doors, but staying in those rooms and expanding those opportunities requires execution. It requires influence. It requires results. And by every measurable sign, he's delivering. What makes this moment even more important is what it represents for the next generation. Athletes are watching. Agents are watching. Brands are watching. The blueprint is being updated in real time. Football will always matter. Performance will always matter. But the days of athletes being defined by one lane are fading fast. Shedeur Sanders isn't just trying to be a great quarterback. He's proving you can build power, stability, and independence while chasing greatness on the field, not after. And whether people love it or hate it, one thing is already clear. This isn't a phase. It's a preview. Because the future of elite athletes won't be built on contracts alone. It'll be built on leverage. And Shedeur is already playing that game at a level most players don't reach until it's almost over.